I'm hoping we can wrap this meeting up probably in about 30, 40 minutes at the most, because we don't have a lot of things on the agenda. We got to get some status, and there's going to be some activity between now and the next meeting dealing with state reimbursements and things that we have to work through. So we'll go ahead and wait another couple minutes here. So we'll go ahead and mute in the meantime.
Me, I'm not there.
Can you hear me at all?
Who's
Can you
that?
hear me? This is Steve. Can you hear me?
Steve. Yeah, we can see.
Okay.
I can see and hear you.
Okay. I just did some funky stuff with my microphone, so I just want to
Okay.
make sure it's working.
Turn your light on, Gil. They were doing that. Oh, Gary Snyder just got in.
Oh, there we go. There's Gary. There goes Gary. There's Gary.
To my knowledge, Lisa, we have no replacement yet for Bob Guerrero, correct?
No, I haven't heard
All right.
anything.
So hopefully we'll get a replacement for him soon. And I don't know if Kate's going to dial in, but and I'm hoping we've got a representative from ONG on here soon. So
OMG.
oh, there's Dan. Good. Dan's here from ONG. That's good. All right, with that, it is 5 p.m. on the 4th of January, 2021. This is the first regular meeting of the Town of Ledyard Permanent Municipal Building Committee of 2021. And looking at the town calendar, Lisa, I think we're the first public meeting.
We are.
Yes, there we are.
We're the guinea pig.
Good to be first. All right, so tonight is a regular meeting, and we'll go ahead and get the meeting started. And let me open my agenda at the same time. And all right, so the first thing, obviously this is a Zoom meeting. I know it's being recorded, and it's 5 p.m. The meeting's called to order. We'll start out with a roll call. So Steve Jeskowitz, chair.
Pete McIntyre, vice chair.
Jerry Trubisky, member.
John Marshall, Town Council.
Wayne Donaldson, Ledyard Public Schools.
And Gary Schneider, member.
Dan
Kate
Hetzler.
DePalma.
Oh, go ahead, Kate.
Sorry, Kate DePalma Herb, Board of Ed.
Dan Hetzler, ONG.
Stephen June, Silver Petrucelli.
All right, I think that's everyone. We do have a quorum, so we'll go ahead and get started with the meeting. Again, welcome to 2021. Happy New Year to everybody. First item on the agenda is, let me get my agenda back up. Got it here. Is approval of the minutes. So we are 2 sets of minutes, our regular meeting on the 7th of December and our special meeting on the 14th of December. So with that, I will entertain motions to approve those meeting minutes.
I'll make that motion.
All right, motion's been by Mr. Tominski. Is there a second?
Second, Pete McIntyre.
Second by Ms. McIntyre. Is there any discussion on the minutes? Okay, we'll do, Lisa, we can do one motion to approve both, correct?
Yeah, that's fine.
All right, so with that, the motion's been made, been seconded. There is no further discussion. All in favor of approving the minutes of 7 and 14 December as written, signify by saying your name and aye. Steve Jeskowitz, aye.
Pete McIntyre, aye.
Jerry Trubisky, aye.
Kate DePalma Herb, aye.
Gary Schneider, aye.
And, oh, that's right. I'm waiting for people that aren't allowed to vote. There we go. With that, the ayes have it and the minutes are approved. All right, moving on our agenda. So we got a couple things to do here. We're at our last meeting, we did the final closeout invoice for the Ledyard Middle School, but by no means are we done there. There's still work going on. So as we, before we take care of paying any bills here, what we'll do is we'll do our, oh, my apologies, I missed Roman numeral 5. It doesn't appear that there are any citizens that have dialed in because we can see who the participants are, but I will take a moment to ensure that if any citizens have dialed in and wish to make comments that they can do that. So with that, I'll pause for 30 seconds. And hearing no citizens' comments, we'll move on to Roman numeral number 6, which is informational items. I have no informational items to share other than I'll just ask Lisa, our calendar, was that accepted by the clerk?
Yes, but we have on the agenda tonight to amend it.
Because we have that one 6
Because
July
that
meeting.
One July holiday that the mayor deemed it as a floating holiday.
Got it. All right, so we'll fix that when we get down there after the track and field. Please don't let me forget that. So with that, we'll move on to the Ledyard School's Improvement Project for the middle school and the Gallup Hill School. And I think what we'll start out with is, in this case, we'll start out with Wayne, if you want to give us some reports on the schools, and then we'll go through Steve, June, and then on to Dan. I realize there'll be some back and forth, so if anyone needs to interrupt Wayne and provide additional information that's really pertinent, or you can just wait till the end of Wayne's time either way. So Wayne, I'm going to turn over to you at this point. The floor is yours.
No problem. Thank you. As you're aware, the new diffusers I reported at the last meeting were installed at the Gallup Hill, and they didn't have any effect when the architect and the foreman from Action Air were there. They were able to determine that the dampers feeding the rooms off those 2 units were never installed. It's supposed to be manual dampers that the balancer can use to adjust. So they were never installed. They did come back and finally install them this past Wednesday, the Wednesday before Christmas, actually. And I did get an email from Dan that they're going to come in and the new balancer is going to come in and rebalance the system on unit, I believe it's 11, this coming Wednesday, and they'll be back on the 13th to balance the unit 10. So hopefully that'll give us a better idea of where we stand on the units.
All right, hey, Wayne, just real quick. So these were in the original, make sure I have this right. These were in the plans to be installed. When the system was built by Action Air, they were not installed. Would not those dampers have been on the checklist for balancing? That somebody would have to sign saying that they set those dampers to a either open shut or an intermediate position as part of the balancing checklist?
Yes, they should have been dealt with in the balancing checklist. They should have been dealt with then when Matt was on the project. He actually said he went up and adjusted them, opening and closing them to see if that changed the volume or the noise level in the rooms, and said it had no effect on them when he was working with JCI on it. So I don't know how he could have when they did not exist.
All right, so that's a really major item here. And there has been a tremendous amount of cost that has been put into, and not just cost that we can see on paper, but your time, Wayne, your people's time, not to mention uncomfortable kids at times and other things. There's a lot of second and third order effects of this. Dan, if you want to just chime in on this particular topic for a minute. First of all, it is reasonable to assume that these dampers would have affected the ability to properly provide comfort to those rooms, correct?
Well, I think some context needs to be provided as to how the system works and what Wayne is providing some information on. Just one note of clarity, the work that we're relating to is RTU 9 and RTU 10. And next week on Wednesday, they will be rebalancing RTU 9, just to correct the statement of 11.
That's, yep.
So what you have in the center of the building is 2 air handling units, one handling the side facing the field and one, the park and rec field. And then RTU 10, which handles the rooms in the center wing that face the new playground areas. The way the system works, as Steve, you're aware from our meeting, is that there are dampers, motorized dampers in each of the diffusers that feed off that space. And so where the original balancing report took the project was, I guess that at some point there was a decision made in which these dampers that would be manually set on the trunk line there was some difficulty getting them physically in the space. And so they were omitted on the understanding that they would be able to balance as well as control the spaces well enough with the motorized damper that's in the diffuser itself. What we learned when we went to the field with our independent balancer and Marty was that physically they could fit a model of damper in the airspace of the second floor classrooms or the upper floor classrooms, and that it would benefit the delivery of controlled space to have those installed. So yes, included in the documents, those dampers should have been installed. And yes, we found in the field that they could be installed. And so yes, they were installed most recently. But I want to make a note that there's also dampers called for on the first floor of the same unit. So if you can picture a unit that's delivering air across the roof and dropping directly into the second floor classrooms, and then dropping by the second floor classrooms in a chase to the first floor classroom. Now, in certain locations, I think there's probably 5 classrooms or possibly 6 in that one row. The upper floor classrooms all have dampers now, but the lower floor classrooms, there are several that are still without enough physical room to put a manual set damper. How that affects the system, again, is you're now utilizing the motorized damper at the diffuser line to regulate the airflow for what would be the entire distribution off that one unit. That's just, I apologize if it's a little too technical, but that's generally what's going on there. Now, from the original balance report that was done back when Matt was on the property, they were able to achieve the design flows for all those spaces balanced. Then with the discomfort and the noise levels that occurred in the first heating season, or potentially even the first cooling season, modifications were made in there, and justifiably so, because we weren't getting comfort levels. And then when the original balancer went back to verify where those flows were, they no longer could provide the CFM that they needed to keep the spaces temperature acceptable. So that's really where the context of this problem is now trying to be resolved, is we have, there's 4, possibly even 5 spaces at worst case where temperature is not being controlled, and the contractor is rectifying that by putting in these dampers.
Now, wouldn't these now is the issue that those dampers are reducing the flow to one area to allow more flow to another? Because it would make sense to me, if you're not getting enough airflow, putting a damper in will only reduce your flow. Putting a damper in will not increase your flow downstream of that damper. It may, however, allow more going somewhere else.
Right. It's actually the guys at the end of the line where the flows were not adequate to try to get. We're not meeting the CFM by design.
Okay.
And so by manually cranking down the ones in path, we're guaranteeing to push that flow to the end of the line.
So when the decision was made to not install the dampers, did that ever make it back into the plans and back to Marty at SPA? And maybe that's a Steve June question. Did Marty know they were not installed?
I do not know offhand. That was before my time. I was working solely on Gallup Hill.
Now, Wayne, you or Dan may know the answer to that because
So Steve, this is Gallup.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I don't know offhand. Sorry.
No,
Well,
and
I'm
I
just
don't know 100%, Steve, but I think by the reaction that I saw when I met with Marty in the field, that he was not aware. To be
I agree with Dan.
transparent.
Everything I've got, again, I don't have any specific where he said that he was never told, but the reactions I got from him were like, oh my God, why aren't these there?
it would be reasonable then to go and ask ourselves to do I hate to say a complete hand over hand of the HVAC, but we might want to ask ourselves at least ask the question, what other dampers were not installed where? So because the real question is it reasonable to think that these dampers alone could have made enough of a difference to constitute the majority of the problem we've had?
So it's a difficult question to ask. I can add one piece of information, and that's when I went to their as-built plans, they did not indicate that they put dampers in those locations. So their as-builts were accurate. you may be able to save some forensic effort by spot checking locations, but also to know that the as-built that they generated of their duct system accurately reflected at least the work in that area.
And those are manual dampers that have no input to the BMS, correct?
Correct.
All right.
They're
So-
purely there at the initial balancing stage. And so I think where the problem came in is efforts to improve the delivery of space conditions, change the balancing enough to where they couldn't get it back into a parameter that, you know, it's fairly complex. If you think about it, if you have 12 diffusers running off of a distribution system and you're trying to use logic to control the amount of closure, at some point you could mess with the logic enough to where you're unable to get back to a position where you're pushing enough air to certain spaces. In a kind of a simplified way, that's what I see from that has occurred there. Again, in these 4 or 5 classrooms that are, or I should say 2 classrooms and 3 auxiliary spaces that don't seem to meet the, more often than acceptable, the space condition.
All right, so I guess my other question goes back on cost, because there's been a considerable amount of costs and expenditures, real costs that we can put dollars on for, you know, for example, buying additional equipment to test things out, additional costs for, you know, Silver Petrucelli's time on this project. Are these costs going to be recoverable to us in any way based on, or is it reasonable for Action Air to have done what they've done, since it's quote in their as-built?
My position on that would be that they didn't put in what was bought, you know, on bid day. I think that there was a lot of conversation during the construction, and it may have come up, it may not have come up if there's any documentation to that effect. But the effort put in by all parties here to try to resolve this condition has been extensive. And I don't think that you're without reasonable expectation that if this was the failing point of how this, you know, this problem has been chased now for back when Mike Brennan was trying to chase it, and now myself, you certainly have the recourse. You have a substantial amount of their funds available to you. I think that it would be appropriate, as well as, you know, in your best, you know, in my opinion, appropriate, as well as you have the right to sit down at a table and say, this is what we've incurred as a result of decisions made during construction, and follow-ups that were done. So.
All right, well, we'll have to have a separate meeting on that and look at that. But in the meantime, you're still holding Action Air money, and I think it's good that we hold that. We haven't closed out Gallup yet. So as we get to the questions here later about closing out Gallup, you know, obviously we need to run this to ground and see what happens with this balancing. Now, this is a separate balancer than who had done the balancing before, correct?
That's correct.
All right, and there's a cost for that balancer.
$4,500.
Right, and who, by the way, who actually found the dampers were missing? Who was it that, which company?
I don't know. When I got there on the morning of the meeting, it was already known, because we had met the balancer to kind of look at the project and see what was, you know, see how we were going to go about the balancing process. And at that point, the installing foreman for Action Air was there, their project manager, Marty, myself, and the balancer. And somebody had already opened up the ceiling, and the foreman was very candid, very transparent. You know, he said he didn't make the decision in a vacuum, that he was told it was not it was okay, and that they were going to be able to balance the system without those particular manual dampers. And again, we're going to go down the same path to a lesser scale. You know, as I understand, of the 12 diffusers that are under control, documents call for 12 manual dampers, and I believe we're going to end up with 9, possibly 10 manual dampers on that sink.
All right, and now if the design called for those dampers to be in there, but they couldn't be put in, does that mean the design was flawed because there wouldn't be space for it?
Well, physical constraints in construction are well deeper than a design team would have the ability to predict.
And plus, it's a 50-year-old building, and there's going to be.
Oh, the reason all the ductwork's on the roof is because there's no room floor to floor.
Right, and And if anyone were to come out and say, hey, we can't put this in per plan, I would like to think that that would go back to the design engineer and say, okay, maybe we have to change something somewhere else as a result of that.
And quite frankly, we're very surprised. We were all very surprised in the room that there was no annotations to the initial balancing report stating that there were no manual dampers. Our experience with TrueFlow is that they won't balance a system until they have been told that it's okay to do it. You know, if there's something missing from contract documents like a manual damper.
Okay,
Not
all right. We're not going to solve any of that tonight, but obviously, Wayne, as this thing progresses, let us know how it works out. And then we'll sit down after we know all the details and all the costs, and we'll sit down and we'll make the appropriate discussions with the right people to figure out the right plan there. All right.
Yep, no problem.
Wayne, we'll go back to you and finish going through the buildings, please, sir.
As I reported last month, we've had numerous failures on the VFDs on the rooftop units. There's been 3 so far. We are still waiting for unit number 3, which feeds the cafeteria, not the cafeteria, the gym at Gallup Hill to come back online. I did talk to Wayne at Action Air this morning on it. He did call me back when I was in meeting. I returned his call later in the day. He hasn't gotten back to me yet, so he was checking in to see why that hadn't been repaired yet. That has been out now for 2 months. That went out the day, actually election day was when we discovered it, and was called in the following Wednesday or Thursday to Dan. So they did find a faulty VFD up there, and we're supposed to replace it. And to date, as of at least this morning sometime, that still was not operating.
Is that the same unit that we just bought extras of that goes somewhere else?
No, this is a dedicated unit for the gym, and I frankly presumed that it was done, and then found out in a meeting several weeks ago that it wasn't done. I put to task Action Air to find out why, and as of this morning, again, I kind of presumed it was done. The parts had arrived at Johnson Controls. So I'm very unsettled again that Wayne had to reach out again this morning, that I reached out, and that we didn't get confirmation back, you know, why by this time today.
Okay, Wayne, keep going. You still have the floor.
Okay, and again, I brought up a bunch of issues from the sprinkler head in the vestibule to the support structure behind the TVs all at the last meeting. I've gotten no updates on them yet. The only one I believe I got some kind of update was the speakers from Dan, that they were in and were supposed to be finished up the Wednesday before Christmas, I believe it was, or in between. But I don't have an update whether they actually finished them or that's complete yet.
On the audio, yes, the work's complete. Mark and D'Agostino group is made aware of that. So not sure if there is any lingering issues related to that. As far as the overall list that Wayne has, honestly, I have not been, I delegated the responsibility, and I don't have an answer for you at this time to find out where and get some commitments as to completion.
Is there any funds left with that contractor that we can recover the $1,200 we spent for an independent guy to come in and evaluate that system that they were working on for 2 years and couldn't figure out?
You're referring to the audio issue?
Yep.
And Custom Electric. I would have to double check. I'm pretty sure there are funds available.
Because that was about $1,200 that we paid out of district funds.
Okay. Yeah, I'll speak to Mark and
I'll have the bill pulled and then send it over to you.
okay.
Again, Marty had found some faulty sensors and stuff on units 9 and 10. As of this morning, they still hadn't been replaced. I thought that went over to Johnson Controls. I guess, you know, from my conversation with Dan this morning or the emails we exchanged, that he was moving with Action Air and Johnson Controls to get those taken care of. And that wouldn't affect Wednesday's balancing, but needed to be done before they finished the balancing the following Wednesday.
Yep. Yeah, that's part of the cost that we've pulled out of Actionair's contract to engage JCI directly.
Do we have any update yet on the heat recovery wheels? Because none of them in these units are operating.
I don't,
Or at
other than
least-
there was the
At
one
least
that
on the BMS system, they're not showing as operating.
So my understanding was someone was going to physically check the disconnect switches. The one unit that was not spinning, somebody checked the disconnect and it was switched in the off position.
Correct. And I know Marty went around and checked a bunch of units. I don't know if he checked them all and found that they were all not operating.
So no, I'll personally verify on Wednesday that that signal is good and that power is good to the wheels.
Okay.
That's also something that'll vet with the commissioning agent. I'll be meeting with Walker this week. There's no way he would have reviewed a operational verification on those units without watching that wheel spin.
You know, outside the punch list items, that's really all I have at Gallup Hill.
Let's
Anybody
stay
else
with-
have anything on Gallup Hill before we move on?
Yeah, I want to stick with Gallup, so let's go to Steve June next. Steve?
Yes. Any concerns that Wayne has, which has pretty much been HVAC, Silver Petrucelli has immediately taken action on. So majority of the work is HVAC work. Have not heard anything more about the punch list items, but our work is very minimal that's coming in now. So that's it.
Keep hitting the mute button. Dan, do you want anything else on that?
Know that I've just seen Chris Rizzi, the original superintendent at the middle school, engaging now some of the contractors, but I apologize, I didn't get an update from him before we sit down today.
Yeah, I know we just rolled out of the holidays and there's a lot of things getting back into gear here for people. I just, looking at the Gallup Hill School, what is our prognosis for moving toward our next application for payment, even if it's not the last one? What are we looking at for a timeline here?
I actually began that work to put some numbers together and do my internal audit in the couple of weeks prior to the holiday. I had made a commitment to some of the trades that I would be putting a bill out. It won't be the final application. We're going to go through 2 cycles on Gallup. The next requisition should be off my desk by, I would give myself another 5 to 7 working days. And then it'll be off to Steve.
Okay. So looking now at, schedules for, when we can realistically, I think our meeting in a month from now, we'll have an application payment is what you're saying.
Yes.
Not final. All right. Let's jump over to the Ledyard Middle School. Again, we may have seen the last application for payment. That doesn't mean things are done. Wayne, what's going on over at LMS?
Basically, not much. Dan was going to set up a meeting with the painting contractor so we could meet over there and review that. I haven't gotten any information on that yet, tentative dates. I believe same thing was going to occur with the ceiling contractor. Again, I haven't gotten anything yet on those. We've still got kitchen equipment that has been a longstanding issue back in September, October of 2019. That hasn't been corrected. We still got the damaged door from the roofing contractor on HVAC unit 3, I believe it is, up on the new building. That's been hammered shut basically. That needs to be replaced. And basically I've gotten no updates on that building at all.
So Chris had been in touch with the acoustical ceiling contractor. I understood he's been out to the site once, and he was setting up a meeting. Evidently, it didn't come to fruition with you, Wayne, to walk through, an understanding of what the scope of work is. So in addition to these, 10 or 15 remaining punch list items, I just have to summarize and get back to you. it would be, yeah, I don't have personal information and would be, providing just guesses.
Okay, do we have any movement whatsoever on paint discussions with the painting contractor of record? Or have we got a motion in that area?
I haven't spoken directly to professional painting, except when I had conversations, 3 months ago, maybe 2 months ago. Where the ball is on that item is with my project executive and Chris Rizzi, who are going to set up a meet with a third independent painting contractor to get their opinion before we sat down with professional painting and basically had a resolution meeting where it was either our third party was going to take on the work or Pro Painting was going to take on the work.
All right, once we get a feel for that, I'm not overly worried about the timeline so much on the paint because it's a cosmetic issue more than anything else. It's really not a, it's not a safety or a health, it's not a, structural issue or anything like that. So I'd rather take a little bit of time, get this thing done right and get it done with the contractor that's responsible for doing it if we can. If not, and we have to fall back on either one of the vendors that Wayne found or something else, we'll figure that out. But I don't want to lose track of that. Steve, June, do you have anything else to add on the middle school?
No, but Dan, if you need some help coordinating that painting meeting, I can give you a hand if you need.
Okay, we were going to, well, I'll leave it to Mark, the third-party painter, essentially, another professional painter that, but not professional painting. If you want to be involved in that meeting, I think it's only appropriate since, we'll try to get a third party's input on what the appropriate scope of work needs to be.
Because I have Wayne's contacts that he had gotten pricing from, so I can do some of that coordination.
Okay.
All right. So with that, anything else to bring up before we get into, we have no change order request for tonight. We've got some invoices to pay. And I realize we've just come out of the holiday season here, but we're going to be moving into the fiscal closeout. I have to meet with Marcia Hancock on the town to talk about some processes there and for documentation and records and things like that. So there's plenty of stuff to do there. I hope to have some type of a plan for that. And Wayne, you'll have to be involved in some of that too for the EDO forms.
Yep.
I expect that meeting would happen in the next 2 weeks and I'll be able to report on that in our next meeting. So with that, I'm on Roman numeral 7, item 4. This is Silver Petrucelli and Associates invoice number 202762 for the Gallup Hill School. And that is in the amount of $9,611.75. The bulk of this is time for Marty, our engineer, who's been working on the HVAC problem on an hourly basis. Again, these are things that we'll be looking at to pass back to Action Air. So with that, I move that we make payment on SPA invoice 202762.
Second, Pete McIntyre.
That's been seconded by Mr. McIntyre. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of approving the invoice signify by saying your name and aye. Steve Jeskowitz, aye.
Pete McIntyre, aye.
Jerry Tominski, aye.
Kate Palmer Herb, aye.
Gary Schneider, aye.
And with that, the ayes have it, and that motion is approved. All right, next item on the agenda is a motion to approve Silver Petrucelli and Associates invoice 202768. This is for the Ledyard Middle School in the amount of $3,289 even. That invoice is in order, and I move that we make payment.
Second, Pete McIntyre.
Okay. It's been seconded by Mr. McIntyre. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of approving the invoice signify by saying your name and aye. Steve Jeskowitz, aye.
Pete McIntyre, aye.
Jerry Tominski, aye.
Kate Palmer Herb, aye.
Gary Schneider, aye.
With that, the ayes have it, and that motion is approved. All right, the next item we have here, and Wayne, help me out here. This ESC invoice for $2,000.
This is a progress payment on the screen and video system for the media center at Gallup Hill.
That's what I thought for the media center. I mean,
Yep, they've installed the screen and the projector is hung. They still have wiring and testing and everything else to do.
All right, but they have put in at least the $2,000 worth of
Yes.
work. All right,
Yes.
with that, all right. So with that, I move that we approve payment to Environmental Services Corporation based on their invoice 1186797 in the amount of $2,000. Motion's on the floor.
Second, Pete McIntyre.
Second by Mr. McIntyre. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of approving the payment to ESC, signify by saying your name and aye. Steve Jeskowitz, aye.
Pete McIntyre, aye.
Jerry Kaminsky, aye.
Kate Topama Herb, I.
Gary Schneider, aye.
Okay, with that, the ayes have it, and that motion is approved. All right, so the next item, actually, Dan, Steve, June, we're going to move on to other items. I know there's a lot of work going on with HVAC. I asked Wayne, please try to keep me informed of what's going on with that. And once we get a resolution on those dampers, even between meetings, I'd like to spread that out to the entire committee so they'll be able to know what's going on with that.
Yep, no, I will keep you abreast as I get information.
All right, so with that, we're going to roll out of the school improvement projects, and we'll see you guys in a month. You're welcome to stay in the meeting because it's an open meeting. Moving on, Roman numeral number 8, Ledyard High School Track and Field Project. The only item that's still outstanding there, and I had some brief discussions again with Linda Davis on the town council, is I was waiting until after the holidays to present something back to her on the scoreboard and the fence. Again, we're not in a super hurry on those other than pricing could change. To really see, I think we've made our last payment otherwise on the project. Wayne, is that correct?
Yes, we're all set there. I sent you as far as I know, the best estimates I had based on what we spent and what we have left.
Right, and so Councilor Marshall, I'm going to send that directly to town council, or I'll send it to Roxanne, and then she'll figure out how to get it over to finance. I'll carbon you on whatever I send.
Thank you.
All right, next item here is the 2021 meeting calendar. When we did pick our, although we approved our minutes because we voted on it, the meeting that we had for 6 July, that turns into the holiday for the town. So let me open my calendar on my end, and looking at July, 6 July is now the floating town holiday. So Lisa, that means that looking at the calendar here, I think 12 July would probably be good. Is that a problem? Or is the 5th the holiday and we need to move to the 6th? I'm a little confused on this one.
Sorry, I had to unmute. No, actually the 5th is the holiday. And then the 6th, the mayor deemed that as a floating holiday.
Okay,
He assigns a floating holiday every year as well.
got it.
So we're
Okay.
closed the 5th and the 6th.
I did understand. All right, so in that case, the 12th would be the best day for that then.
I would think so, because Wednesday, yeah.
Okay, I don't think anyone on the entire Zoom call right now is planning in July, let alone in probably February. So with that, does anybody have any issues, verbal, just general discussion before we vote? Okay, well, with that, I move that we amend our meeting calendar as previously provided to the town clerk for our July regular meeting to be scheduled on the 12th of July.
Second, Pete McIntyre.
Seconded by Mr. McIntyre. Is there any discussion? Okay, hearing none, all in favor of approving a change to our meeting schedule, meeting calendar, signify by saying your name and aye. Steve Jeskowitz, aye.
Pete McIntyre, aye.
Jerry Kaminsky, aye.
Kate Topama Herb, I.
Gary Schneider, aye.
Okay, with that, the ayes have it. All right, any further items for, this is a regular meeting, so we can add things to the agenda. Does anyone have any other business to bring before the committee?
I do have a question, Steve. I don't know if you received the email from Roxanne today, because Steve Shuttleworth is up for reappointment.
I did receive that today, and I need to respond back to her with that he's not on this meeting here, but his attendance has been under the excellent, good, fair, poor system, good. So I will send that back to her. I normally print them out and scan them back to her. I just have to get to a printer.
Okay.
And I think that's it. And so with that, Happy New Year to everybody. And I move we adjourn.
Second.
Seconded, all in favor of adjourning, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. We're adjourned. Happy New Year. See you guys
Happy New Year.
4
Thank
weeks.
you.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. See you guys.